Johanna Wright, and just want to take the first couple of minutes to get to know each other. So first question is, how many of you are MBA students? Mostly? And then how many undergrads? No undergrads. And then how many people, I guess part-time versus full-time, how many part-time? Then how many full-time? And then how many industry? I hear there's some people from industry. Okay, so it's a good mix. I was about 5 years ago at the end of my MBA program and trying to figure out what is next. And
sorry.
It's okay. And so I'm now the director of product management at Google. And so another question for you is, how many of you either are product managers or want to be product managers? Okay, so that's a few. And then does anyone not know what a product manager is? Okay, there's one person. Well, I'll tell you anyway, 2 people. Good. So what product managers do are we're kind of the people that sit amongst the creative people. So we sit amongst the talented engineers, the graphic designers, and try and make something practical of that. So we're kind of the voice of business amongst the creative people, and we try and define really what the features are and what they'll look like. And I was in business school at UCLA. I graduated about 5 years ago, and I just, at that point in my life, I was trying to figure out what am I going to do now? And at UCLA, there's a lot of pressure. A lot of people don't want to be product managers. I think that's more prevalent here in the Valley because there's so many tech firms. But at UCLA, there's like, are you going to go into finance? You're going to go into consulting? You're going to go into marketing? And I kind of was thinking to myself, well, I don't think I'm going to go into any of these fields, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. And so the reason that I was drawn to Google was actually the day I applied was the day that Google launched Google Maps. And so for me, this was just a really exciting moment because Google Maps was all of a sudden this very interactive way to view maps and directions that hadn't been done before. And I said, this sounds like a really cool company, and I want to be there working on something innovative. And that's the topic for today, is search innovation. And I think pretty much unanimously everyone thinks of Google as an innovative company. And first, I'm going to spend a little bit of time taking you through a set of principles that Larry and Sergey, so Larry Page and Sergey Brin, laid out when they were creating our company to say, how can you drive innovation in such a big company? And then I'm going to show you a few examples of how these principles have played out in search. So this is a boring slide. This is what we work on. Hard, interesting, search-related problems in computer science, so that's what I do every day. And let's just jump into the innovation principles, because I think these are really interesting. And you can take them with you in your life if you go on to be a product manager or if you do something differently. So the first one is ideas come from everywhere. And that's really interesting, because as a product manager, you get told that your job is to come up with the specifications, design the product. Now, if you thought that the ideas, some people interpret this as the ideas must come from me. I'm the person who's supposed to design the project and the product. But really, when you look around to the people near you and your colleagues, there are a lot of really good ideas. And when you talk to someone and you have an idea, you bounce it off them, they bounce it back off you, you can get a lot more going than if you just had the idea yourself. And Google does a lot of work to foster this notion of ideas coming from everywhere. So we have something called like our ideas message board, whereby anyone, if they have an idea, like you just send an email to ideas. And you're like, this is my product idea. And then people will vote on it and comment on it. So I think that's pretty cool. The ideas come from everywhere. And really weaves nicely into the second principle, which is share everything that you can. And Google is an extremely open culture. And this gets back at the point that I was just making, which is you may, again, have a great idea and feel like you should keep it to yourself. Because if you keep it to yourself, then it might get a little better. And you might develop it until it's perfect. You might build the perfect castle. But really, I think you've got to think, you know, if I told this smart person sitting next to me my idea, how would they add to it? How would this change the idea, and how would it morph and grow into something bigger and better? And the kinds of things we do at Google to make what you're working on and the ability to share public are, let me just give you a few examples. One is that every engineering project is just available to everyone else in the company. So if you want to look on the intranet, you can just see what all the projects are, who's working on them. If you had an idea and you wanted to work on that project, you could just contact them and go talk to them. Another thing that we do, which is kind of an odd way of management, is that everybody writes, we have this is like a task list, or it's like your way of managing your goals, is that every Monday you send an email to this machine that basically records, and you're supposed to write down what you did last week and what you're going to do this week. And then you could look it up for everyone in the company. So if I'm trying to figure out what somebody does at Google, I can just like go look up their name, and then I can just look at what they've been doing. And I think it just creates a really nice culture of openness in a way to get ideas out there and get people working together. The third principle is creativity loves constraint. So I think that when people think about creativity, I think you don't think about constraints, right? You think about wild people doing imaginative things. But in the history of creativity, lots of forms, things like haikus or sonatas, are actually very structured and defined things that if you were going to develop them, already have constraints there. And I certainly see this a lot in my job. So we have, working on search, we have the constraints of many millions of users who use search every day and have expectations of how it's going to work. And so anytime we want to add features to search, we have to think about, what are the expectations of people who already use search? Are we going to, are they still going to be able to use it after we add this feature? Because they are already dependent on this product. And I think actually these constraints make things a little bit easier to do because you can kind of understand the boundaries within your that you're working within. The important piece of advice, though, that I would give everyone is to question what the constraints are. So it is important to have constraints, but sometimes the constraints that you observe may be false. So it may be that you think that you're bounded in certain ways, but you really need to kind of push at the boundaries and see like, oh, do I really have to launch it by this deadline? Oh, do I really care if these customers still use it? And you have to ask these questions because some of those constraints may go away and may take your project in a new direction. This actually, I think, data is apolitical. This, I think, is really a superb business lesson and interesting in solving conflicts in business and really figuring out how to get your point across. So the way that I kind of talk to my team, the people who work for me about this, is, the scenario will come up like this. Somebody will come to me and they'll be a product manager and they'll say, Johanna, VP X wants to do this, and VP Y wants to do this other thing. What should I do? And I think that my response is always, you got to just look to the facts. Look to the facts and try and express the facts through data. What data do you have, and how can you, bring people together to look at the actual facts to make a decision? And I can give a kind of a fun example of a decision that was made at Google based on data. And we make a lot of decisions on data, but this is a fun one. And my boss talks about this a lot.